Hello there, and welcome back to the Codex. So, it's nearly 7 a.m., and I have been awake all night, and all of yesterday pretty much, but boy, do we need to talk about the Trumna Prime, because this thing is it's pretty tasty, I can't lie. And you're about to see in a moment here that the title of this video was not a lie. I really did turn this thing into a laser beam, so let's go ahead and go over the build here. So this is the Prime version of the Trumna. It has most of its base stats pretty much boosted over the regular, although very interestingly, it still has 24% crit chance, just like the regular one did. Not really sure why they did that, to be honest. I mean, even if they just bumped it from 24 to like 28, that would have been noticeably better once you account for the crit mod stacking on top of that whatnot, but that's okay. It's definitely better. Perhaps the unironically biggest buff this weapon got was having the reload go from 5 seconds down to 4 seconds, which is still super long, but cutting that down by a whole second does make it feel just that little bit smoother to use. Now, as for the mods here, you can see I'm running double crit chance. So for a lot of rifles these days, we just run crit delay, but on this weapon, with only 24% crit chance, if you just run crit delay, it only has 72% crit chance that you can see here. With galvanized scope, it goes up to closer to like 148% crit chance. If you only use galvanized scope, it has almost exactly 100% crit chance. So this would be 100%, this would be 72%. If you use them both together, it's about 148%. So nearly half the time you're going to be orange critting, which means that nearly half the time this critical multiplier here is going to actually be doing closer to 15x damage, because whenever you land an orange crit, it's double your crit multiplier -1. So basically this will be around 15x crit damage about half the time. Just make sure that you're ADSing to actually benefit from that galvanized scope and stacking up and whatnot. So this weapon has heat damage built in, which means that if we just throw on a cold mod, in this case Prime Cryo rounds, you get blast damage in one mod spot, which frees up that other mod slot. So this build is based around a decent chunk of upfront damage, because I'm using cryo rounds instead of rhyme rounds that I could be using. And then I'm basically just scaling up those blast procs. So that's why I have Rifle Elementalist here for that 1.9x multiplier to that. And this is one of the few builds in the game that I actually think Hammer Shot was a decent slot, because we really do want that crit damage. It does beef up our upfront damage. It does multiply the blast procs. And regarding the blast box, we definitely want that 80% status chance so that it goes off more often. If we go over to our status weighting here, for example, we can see that on the actual direct hits, we will proc blast 52.5% of the time, and then 61.2% of the time on the explosion. And those can both go off in the same enemy. So you're going to proc multiple blast procs very rapidly on individual enemies and on crowds, especially once you account for multi-shot. Now, this weapon has some pretty intense recoil. It's very hard to stay on target, and especially if you want to go for consistent headshots, it's really annoying in this weapon. So, I have paired Primary Deadhead and Stabilizer together, which adds up to minus 100% recoil reduction. It actually adds up to minus 110% recoil, but obviously that doesn't do anything. So this gives minus 100% recoil, meaning it's just a flat beam. So you could add 1,000% fire rate to this thing now, and it would still just shoot completely straight as if it was a straight-up laser beam, which is a huge indirect damage increase by allowing you to stay on target and keep hitting those headshots, because critical headshots do 6 times damage. So if you can consistently beam heads as you sweep across crowds, you will do way more damage. Along with, Primary Deadhead gives a 30% headshot damage multiplier to feed into that. And that headshot multiplier, again, does apply to blast procs, so this will really shred dudes. Now, speaking of shred, I'm using Prime Shred as my fire rate mod on here. You really do want to use Prime Shred if you have it, because that little bit of fire rate is a nice DPS bump, but also the punch through will again increase the utility of those blast procs, because if you punch through into a crowd of enemies and you hit 3 different enemies with that same bullet, that bullet can repeatedly proc blast on each of those 3 enemies that it hits, so you massively increase that AoE from blast procs that you're getting and that scaling damage and whatnot. Now, another thing that makes this weapon feel much better to use, speaking of fire rate, is if you're using a weapon, or not a weapon, if you're using a companion that's able to trigger reinforced bond, which I'm using a Panzer Valpaphyla, which also means I'm benefiting from viral quills. Panzervolpifilers are able to trigger both Tenacious Bond and Reinforced Bond, so I'm benefiting from this extra 1.2x crit damage multiplier and the 60% fire rate. You really want fire rate on this weapon, especially free fire rate from Reinforced Bond that doesn't take up a weapon slot. So when you combine this with Prime Shred, I actually have 115% bonus fire rate in total, so you're more than doubling its fire rate, which you will see makes this feel really good to use, especially with no recoil. Let's go ahead and hop into a mission here and see how this performs. Alright, so I've hopped into the classic Steel Path Conjunction Survival mission. I'm using my test Revenant build here, so this Revenant doesn't have any damage buffs on. I don't have any arcanes that affect weapon damage. I'm not using emerald shards or anything, not that it would matter because I'm not doing corrosive damage. So nothing on this build buffs damage unless I activate the Roar helmet that I have on, which that is also here for testing purposes, so you can see how the weapon might perform if you do add any kind of external buffs to it, for example. So let me get this Deadhead stacked up here. And you can see, once it gets stacked up, it starts to shred, especially with this alt fire. Boom. I love it. Just make sure that you're keeping your ADS going so that you actually benefit from the extra crit chance from Galvanized Scope, because you only get that when you're ADSing. You have to get headshots to actually stack it up, and then you have to be ADSing to benefit from it. If you're hip firing, you'll see that I just hit yellow crits, basically, and that's because I'm only benefiting currently from critical delay. Now I ADS, and you see I go back to orange critting, so just keep that in mind. It's a nice little group of guys here. Yeah, I love that all fire. I think I just saw 4.1 million damage. Let's go ahead and pop Roar here so we can get an idea of what this is like if you have a damage buff. And especially since Roar counts as a faction damage multiplier, it's real spicy. It's really good, as you can see here. And if you were to throw Armor Strip into the mix, for example, if you're playing as somebody with, you know, Pillage or Terrify or any other number of armor stripping abilities, that, of course, is another enormous damage increase, especially on Steel Path, where enemies quickly have that 2700 armor cap, which gives them 90% damage reduction. If you take that away, that's basically a 10 times damage multiplier, which, especially if you want to scale up the utility of those blast procs, will really help you get into much higher levels without it starting to fall off. I look forward to seeing an Acolyte spawn in here, see what this does to him. I really like to have my alt fire ready when the Acolytes come, so you can just blast to one-tap them through their damage attenuation and hopefully just get rid of them right away. But yeah, this thing shreds, as you can see, and it's a straight-up laser beam. I don't know if you guys have used... If any of you watching this video have not used the Trumna yet, and you're not aware of how much recoil it typically has and how you can not land consistent headshots, unless you're like a pro CSGO player or something, go throw on the Trumna, or the Trumna Prime in this case, with no negative recoil mods, and just go use it and see how terrible it is to shoot, basically. And then try this build out, come back, drop a comment in the comment section, let me know how you like it. Because I think you guys are going to like this laser beam setup. I mean, look at that. It's just so delicious. Interesting note about Reinforced Spawn, speaking of it being a delicious laser beam with high fire rate, is Reinforced Spawn seems to turn off when your companion goes down. So if you notice while you're going through a mission like this, say your Panzer... See, right now, here we go. Perfect example. Thank you, Panzer. I actually want you to go down. You can see now I'm firing noticeably slower, and that's because I'm only benefiting from my Prime Shred right now, because, like I said, apparently when companions go down, you stop benefiting from Reinforced Spawn. And maybe you stop... Yeah, it looks like you also stop benefiting from Tenacious Spawn, so do keep that in mind. You definitely want your companion to be up. We should be getting an Acolyte soon here, hopefully. Not much else to say about this weapon. I mean, it's honestly... It's fantastic. I mean, I didn't like the regular Trumna, to be honest. I didn't really... I didn't give it too much of a chance. It didn't feel great to use, I feel like. But now with the Trumna Prime, some slightly better base stats, also me just knowing, you know, how to build a little better than back when Deimos first came out, for example, and the changes to how blast procs work. This thing really, it's closer to the top of my list now. I can't lie. I cannot lie. Now, if you throw this on, if you throw any blast build on something like Saren with Toxic Lash or anybody using Zada's Whisper, there's some funky interactions between getting multi-hits with Blast proc and Zada's Whisper or Toxic Lash. So if you really want to see some hilarious damage numbers, put that combination on, and you'll kill things. I'll just say, you'll kill things much harder than I am now, even. I would really like to kill the Acolyte hard right now. If it would spawn in, that'd be fantastic. But I think it's afraid after seeing the performance here. Once I kill the Acolyte, just to prove to you guys that I can with this weapon, that'll be about it for this video. Just quickly showcasing the Trumna here. I'm very interested to, like I said, hear what you guys have to say below regarding how you like this weapon, especially if you tried this particular build. I think it's very fun. And literally, where's the Acolyte? This is crazy. I guess I'll just nuke down these Thrax right here instead of the Acolyte. So yeah. Alright. That's pretty much it, guys. I guess I will close the video out without an Acolyte kill. Because he doesn't want... Oh, there he is. See? I told him that he wouldn't be a co-star in the video, and he had to show up. I knew that would get him. Alright, here he is. Here we go. Check this out. Goodbye. Goodbye, sir. Have a good one. Alright. The thing's a beast. Check it out. Throw this build on. Turn it into a blast proc laser beam where you can just absolutely dome heads. And like I said, let me know in the comments. Do you guys like this weapon? Do you like this build in particular? And I will see you guys in the next one. Peace out.